Unless one is saturated with love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot appreciate the transcendental value of Lord Ramachandra. One cannot see him with material eyes. Because demons like Ravana have no spiritual vision, they consider Lord Ramachandra an ordinary Kshatriya king. Ravana therefore attempted to kidnap Lord Ramachandra's eternal consort, Sita Devi. Actually, however, Ravana could not carry off Sita Devi in her original form. As soon as she was touched by Ravana's hands, she gave him a material form. But she maintained her original form beyond his vision. Therefore, in this verse, the words Pratyat Prashantam indicate Lord Ramachandra and his potency. The goddess Sita keep themselves aloof from the influence of the material energy. And you see how that works. It is not possible to approach the Supreme Spiritual Being and his pure spiritual devotional energy materially, with material energy. It's not possible. As soon as Ravan tried to reach for Sita Devi, to try to engage materially with Sita Devi, she gave him a material form to play with. He didn't get actual Sita Devi. You can't, materially, because she's spiritual. She has nothing to do with the material energy. Nothing whatsoever to do with the material energy. She's not a material form. It's two different types of energies. But as soon as someone in material consciousness tries to approach those spiritual beings, those spiritual forms, immediately they get a representation only. They don't get the actual substance. Now we can see that this works in the other direction also. In other words, someone who's contaminated by the material energy, in that contaminated state, if they try to approach the pure spiritual platform of devotional service in their contaminated state, they can't attain pure spiritual platform that way. Because of their motivation isn't to go to the spiritual platform and surrender and become purified. That's not how they're approaching. They're approaching because they want to drag down into the material plane these extraordinary spiritual forms of beauty and opulence and strength, like this. So they don't get it. Immediately those pure entities and those pure forms escape their grasp. They can't. But it works the other way. By the desire and the compassion of these pure entities, these pure beings, the Lord and his associates, when they come in contact with persons, by their mercy, those persons can be transformed. So it works both ways. By the Lord's inconceivable mercy, through his representatives and his pure surrendered souls, if they reach out for someone, then that person is transformed. But if someone is those that are in material consciousness and want to reach out and transform the pure spiritual beings into material energy, it doesn't work. All they get is material energy, more material energy. Why? It says here, Lord Ramachandra and his potency, the goddess Sita, keep themselves aloof from the influence of material energy. That's why when you see in Krishna Lila, when the demons attack, they can't hurt Krishna. Bhakashura comes with his beaks and tries to attack Krishna with his sharpened beak. He wasn't an ordinary bird, he was a very big bird. He can't affect Krishna. Krishna just takes those beaks and rips them open. And in the process, that entity who took that form as Bhakashura becomes liberated. There's always benefit. When you come in contact with Krishna, there's always benefit. Even Rava, he was liberated. He attacked Sita and attacked Ram also. He attacked Sita Ram. So he could not hurt them in any way, but he became liberated from that horrible form of Ravana. He was liberated from that Rakshasa. Unless one is saturated with love. Okay, we read that. Now we go to the next little section here. In the Upanishads it said, the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the personality of Godhead, can be seen or perceived only by persons who are saturated with devotional service. As stated in Brahma Samhita, another nice verse, Premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santah sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama shundarama chincha guna swarupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee, whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shamashundara, situated within the heart of the devotee. Similarly, in Chandogya Upanishad it is stated, Itais Tishro Devata Anena Jivena. In this verse of the Chandogya Upanishad, the word Anena is used to distinguish the Atma and Paramatma as two separate entities, two separate identities. The words Tisro Devata indicate that the body of the living entity is made of three material elements, fire, earth, and water. Although the Paramatma enters the heart of the Jivatma, who is influenced and designated by a material body, the Paramatma has nothing to do with the Jivatma's body. Because the Paramatma has no material connections, he's described here as Anam Rupam Niraham. The Paramatma has no material identity, whereas the Jivatma does. The Jivatma may introduce himself as an Indian, an American, a German, and so on. But the Paramatma has no such material designations, and therefore he has no material nature. The Jivatma is different from his name, but the Paramatma is not. His name and he himself are one and the same. This is the meaning of Niraham, which means without material designations. This word cannot possibly be twisted to mean the Paramatma has no ahankara or no I-ness or identity. He has his transcendental identity as the Supreme. This is the explanation given by Srila Jiva Goswami. According to another interpretation given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Niraham means Nirnish Chayena Aham. Niraham does not mean that the Supreme Lord has no identity. Rather, the stress given by the word aham proves strongly that he does have his personal identity, because nur not only means negative, but also means strong ascertainment. So a little further clarification here about spiritual and material, and how the Lord is manifest in the heart of the living being as a Paramatma. So we know from that little example about the two birds in the tree. The one bird is busily trying to enjoy the fruits of the material energy, the fruits of sense enjoyment through the material body. That's the Jivatma, conditioned Jivatma. But also in the same tree, in that body, is the expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma form. He's there, sitting there with the living entity. And the living entity is identifying with the material body, but the Jivatma is not. But it doesn't mean that Jivatma has no identity or no sense of self. There's just some kind of white light energy or something. No, there's identity is there. Just like the spiritual master is the external manifestation of the supersoul within the heart. And what is it that the external manifestation is there? Why? What is the function? Is to help the living entity make contact with devotional service, engage in devotional service, become detached from identification with the material body, and begin to identify with the Supreme Self as the servant of the Supreme Self. So the spiritual master is the external manifestation of the supersoul within the heart. So it's not that the spiritual master has no identity. No, it's very, very real, manifest before the disciple. And similarly, the Lord within the heart is very real, there with the disciple, just waiting for the jiva to turn to the Paramatma within the heart and engage in devotional activities. Become detached from the material body, which is temporary, and is going to be destroyed after a little while. In no sense getting too involved with the material body if it's not going to last. Better to make the connection with the Supreme Lord within the heart, who's eternal, never changes. It's not just a mental exercise, it's the quality of the experience, which is living entities looking for pleasure. That's why they're identifying with the material body and material senses, thinking they can enjoy sense gratification through a material body and through material senses. But when they experience a higher taste in association of devotional activities and devotional service with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that taste is much higher. And so there really is no question of being attracted any longer to the material activities. Doesn't make any sense. I'm getting a higher taste. So it's not just a mental exercise, it's an experience. Begin to experience our spiritual nature. So that Paramatma has nothing to do with material sense gratification whatsoever. That's the jiva's problem. The jiva doesn't always know what to do with their minute independence. Now that independence is there, it has to be there, because it being an expansion of the Lord. The living entity is expanded from the Lord and is a spiritual part and parcel of the Lord. As such, has almost all the qualities of the Lord, just minutely. And one of the Lord's qualities is he's completely independent. He does what he wants to do. He's not dependent at all. So that tendency is there in the particle also, to want to be independent. But it's not in the best interest of the living entity, because there's only one totally, completely independent living entity, and that is the Lord himself. And because he's the source of everyone and everything, everyone is actually dependent on the Lord. So it's a little bit of an awkward position. The Lord is actually very understanding that this can be a problem for the living entity, and so he's made arrangements. You want to exercise your independence. What can I do? You have that. You have that desire to be independent, to taste independence. So some arrangement is made where that can be exercised. You can try to exercise your independence, but it's an impossible desire, because ultimately you're dependent. So we have to accommodate somehow so that you can come to the right understanding of what your actual position is, and that exercising that independence from your own source is not in your best interest. Now, individuality, that will never be taken away. You're always an individual. And that's where the pleasure is, not in the independence. The jiva gets it mixed up. They think that, or they have this understanding or this desire that somehow my individuality is threatened if I don't have my complete independence. That dependence means I'll lose my individuality, I'll lose myself. I don't want to lose myself. I want to be me. And that means, in order to be an individual, I have to be independent. And that's the problem. No. In order to be an individual, it's not a matter of becoming independent of your source. And actually, everyone is dependent. Even come to the material plane and want to exhibit independence, everyone's still like interdependent. If you want to drink milk, then you have to go to someone who has a cow. It's like, you're dependent. And you want a loving relationship, you have to find a mate or a partner or whatever. It's like, so everyone's interdependent. And that doesn't work at all, because that's based on the body only, and even if there is some workable arrangement, it comes to an end. So, but that's the problem, that in order to experience my individuality, I have to experience my independence. But no one is independent. Everyone is... The source is Krishna. He's the only one who's independent. So the arrangement is there in the material world to try and act out independence. And then also all arrangement is there to give some good guidance of what the actual position is, and that the individuality is not threatened. You'll always remain an individual. Even Krishna likes that. He doesn't want people to lose he wants that individuality there for himself and for his expansions, because that's where the pleasure is, in relationship. Relationship means between individuals. So he's not the personality of Godhead is the supreme enjoyer. So what enjoyment is there in not allowing other individuals to be individuals? It doesn't make any sense at all. So that's the kind of God Krishna is. encourages that individuality. Variety is the mother of enjoyment. Unlimited variety, unlimited individuals. Wow! And he's the source of that individuality also. So that's the conflict. I feel like I might be getting a little bit of an appreciation of this. And I know devotees struggle with it a lot. Why did Krishna, why are we the way we are? And if the spiritual world, is so perfect and we were there, why did we leave? And maybe we didn't come from the spiritual world. Maybe we were never there to begin with, and we've just been floating in eons in the brahmacharya. All this, all these different attempts to try to get a grasp on things. The details, but I'm actually I feel very good about this general kind of understanding or illumination of why we have this independence, or want this independence, because we're like Krishna, and Krishna is independent. But when we try to imitate Krishna's independence, that's our problem. Because we are an expansion of Krishna, so we can't be independent ever. And when we think it impairs our individuality, we get the two mixed up. It's called false ego. We get this big ego, sense of I, the independent I. That's the false ego. The part and parcel I, that's nice, that's good, we want that. That's eternal and under the full shelter of the divine energy of the Lord, the superior energy of the Lord, no problem. The part and parcel I, who am I? I'm a servant of the Lord, I'm a servant of Krishna, or servant of a servant of a servant, or aspiring to be a servant of a servant of a servant. That's actually a safe position. But the really dangerous position is the independent I, the defiant I, the rebellious I. That's an ego. It's called a false ego. And it gets smashed because it's not in accord with the way things are. It's an illusion. And illusions have their way of dissolving. And if attached to an illusion, then when the illusion dissolves, like a bubble bursts, it's painful. When you're attached to it, identity crisis. So, this Krishna consciousness movement is pretty wonderful. Okay, so is that the purport? End of the purport? Yes, that's the end of text 4. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.